You remember him as Ben Cartwright, the wise, unwavering father on Bonanza. But the true story of Lorne Greene is far more complex. Behind the cameras, he clashed with co-stars, endured personal heartbreak, and reshaped the way television was made. From a young man in Canada with dreams far beyond radio waves to a Hollywood icon who left an undeniable mark, his journey was anything but ordinary. Before he became a TV legend, he was known as the Voice of Doom, delivering wartime broadcasts that gripped a nation. Later, he not only dominated the small screen, but also made an unexpected leap into music, landing a #1 hit at the height of Beatlemania. And just when the world thought they had him figured out, he traded the Wild West for the vast expanse of space, commanding one of science fiction's most ambitious TV series. This is the story of Lorne Greene, his triumphs, his struggles, and the legacy he left behind. Long before he became a television icon, Lorne Greene was just a boy growing up in Ottawa, Canada. Born in 1915 as Lyon Hyman Greene, he was the son of Jewish immigrants who had left the Russian Empire in search of a better life. His father, a hard-working shoemaker, provided for the family as best he could, but when the Great Depression hit, their savings were wiped out. Like so many others during that time, they had to rebuild from nothing. Despite the hardships, education was always a priority in the Greene household. His parents had high hopes for him, encouraging him to pursue music, perhaps even a career as a concert violinist. But young Lyon had other ideas. Though he initially followed a practical path, enrolling at Queen's University in Kingston to study chemical engineering, fate had a different plan. He joined the university's drama guild on a whim, and soon discovered a passion he never knew he had. The stage gave him confidence, a purpose, and, most importantly, it introduced him to the instrument that would define his career, not a violin, but his deep, resonant voice. At Queen's, his involvement in theater grew, and he began performing on the university's radio station, CFRX. That experience changed everything. He realized that his voice had a unique presence, one that carried authority and emotion. He abandoned his engineering studies and shifted his focus to languages, studying French and German to further refine his diction and vocal delivery. By the time he graduated in 1937, he knew what he wanted: to be an actor. Determined to master his craft, he moved to New York and trained at the prestigious Neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. There, he studied under Sanford Meisner, a legendary acting coach known for shaping some of the greatest performers of the era. But breaking into the entertainment world wasn't easy. Success didn't come overnight. He needed work, and radio seemed like the perfect place to start. In 1939, Greene returned to Canada and joined the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, where his voice immediately stood out. Listeners across the country found comfort in its warmth, its strength. He became a trusted narrator, guiding audiences through daily broadcasts with clarity and conviction. Before long, he was given a title that reflected his growing influence: the Voice of Canada. But then, war came, and with it, his role took on new weight. As World War II raged across Europe, Greene became CBC's principal newsreader, delivering daily updates from the front lines. He read casualty reports, detailed battle losses, and relayed messages from military officials with a tone that commanded attention. The gravity of his voice made the war feel real, too real, in fact. The reports were often grim, and his delivery so powerful that the public gave him a new nickname: the Voice of Doom. Though the title was unsettling, it spoke to the impact he had. In a time when radio was the primary source of news, Greene's voice became one of the most trusted in the country. Canadians relied on him to tell them the truth, even when the truth was difficult to hear. But his contributions to radio weren't just vocal. He was also an innovator. While working at CBC, he invented a simple yet revolutionary device, a backward-running stopwatch. Unlike traditional stopwatches that counted up, this one counted down, allowing radio announcers to see exactly how much time was left in a segment. In an era before digital clocks and precise on-air timers, this invention changed the game. It gave broadcasters more control over their timing, ensuring smoother transitions between segments and helping to prevent overruns. What started as a small tool for his own use quickly became an industry standard. His invention spread beyond CBC, finding its way into television and radio studios worldwide. Though it was a modest creation, it provided an advantage that professionals would rely on for decades. Yet, despite his success in radio, something was missing. Greene hadn't forgotten his first love, acting. He had spent years behind the microphone, but now he wanted to be seen, not just heard. He had the voice. He had the experience. Now, he needed a stage big enough to match his ambitions. So, in 1945, he took a bold step. He founded the Lorne Greene Academy of Radio Arts in Toronto, a school dedicated to training the next generation of broadcasters and actors. Over the years, his academy produced talented graduates, many of whom went on to have successful careers in television, radio, and film. Among them were future stars like Leslie Nielsen and James Doohan, two names that would later become legendary in their own right. Greene's contributions to Canadian media were undeniable. He had shaped the way radio was delivered, mentored future stars, and introduced innovations that would last long after he had moved on. But as the 1950s approached, he knew it was time for the next chapter. He had conquered radio. Now, it was time to take on Hollywood. By the mid-1940s, Lorne Greene had built an impressive career in Canada. He was a respected radio broadcaster, the founder of a successful broadcasting school, and the voice that millions trusted for news. But deep down, he knew this wasn't his final destination. His true passion had always been acting, and if he wanted to take that dream further, he had to leave the comfort of Canadian radio and step into the unpredictable world of Hollywood. Greene had already made a mark as an educator. The Lorne Greene Academy of Radio Arts, which he founded in 1945, was producing some of Canada's most talented voices. Future stars like Leslie Nielsen and James Doohan passed through its doors, learning the craft of performance under Greene's guidance. He had built something meaningful, something that changed lives. But as much as he loved teaching, he couldn't ignore his own ambitions any longer. He had spent years training others. Now, it was time to take the leap himself. In 1952, he made the bold decision to move to Hollywood. It was a gamble. He wasn't a fresh-faced newcomer. He was in his late 30s, an age when most actors had either made it or moved on. And while his deep, commanding voice had made him a star in radio, it turned out to be a double-edged sword in Hollywood. Casting directors saw him as too serious, too authoritative. He wasn't the charming leading man or the comic relief. He was the father, the general, the judge. The roles that came his way were limited, and the few he landed didn't offer the depth he craved. But Greene was determined. He took what he could get, appearing in live television productions and small supporting roles. Then, in 1953, he finally got his first major break, not in Hollywood, but on Broadway. He was cast in the title role of Othello, a part that required not just a powerful presence, but deep emotion and complexity. It was the perfect challenge, and he delivered a performance that earned respect from theater audiences. It was proof that he had more to offer than just his voice. That momentum carried him into Hollywood, where, in 1954, he landed his first film role. He was cast as Saint, Peter in The Silver Chalice, a biblical epic starring a young Paul Newman. The film had high expectations, with its unique artistic design and religious themes. Some critics praised its bold visual style, while others found it too theatrical, even artificial. Paul Newman himself would later call it one of the worst movies ever made. But for Lorne Greene, it was a breakthrough. He wasn't just a voice behind a microphone anymore. He was on the big screen. He had made it to Hollywood. Still, success didn't come easily. Greene quickly realized that the industry had a specific image of him, and breaking free from it wouldn't be simple. His deep, authoritative voice made him the perfect fit for roles that required gravitas: judges, military officers, historical figures. He wasn't getting the varied roles of a leading man. Instead, he was playing powerful but secondary characters, men whose presence shaped the story but never drove it. Producers and directors saw him as a figure of command, someone whose voice could carry weight. He appeared in television anthologies and historical dramas, always portraying men of authority. In Sailor of Fortune, 1955 to 1958, he played a former Royal Navy officer turned adventurer. The show gave him steady work, but it didn't bring him stardom. He made guest appearances on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, where he played dignified, serious roles that reinforced the Hollywood perception of him. The problem wasn't talent. Greene had plenty of it. The problem was perception. Hollywood saw him as a specific type, and in an industry where image dictated opportunity, that could be a career killer. He was capable of playing complex, emotional characters, but those weren't the roles being offered. Still, Greene wasn't the kind of man to give up. He had already reinvented himself once, moving from engineering to radio, from radio to theater, and now from theater to film. If he had to break into Hollywood by playing authority figures, then so be it. He would embrace the image they had given him and turn it into an advantage. He just needed the right role, the one that would make the world see him not just as a voice, not just as a supporting character, but as a star. And in 1959, that role finally arrived. By the late 1950s, Lorne Greene had spent years working his way through Hollywood. He had built a solid career playing authority figures, but he was still waiting for the role that would define him. That moment came in 1959, when he was offered a part in a new television series, a Western unlike anything audiences had seen before. NBC was launching a groundbreaking show called Bonanza, set on the vast Ponderosa Ranch in Nevada. It would follow the lives of a widowed father and his 3 sons, focusing not just on adventure, but on family, morality, and the struggles of the American frontier. Greene was approached to join the cast, but not as Ben Cartwright. At first, he was offered the role of Adam, the eldest son. But then, his longtime friend Leslie Nielsen gave him a piece of advice that would change everything. He told Greene, "If you play the father, you'll be the heart of the show. No matter what happens, your character will always be at the center." Greene listened. He turned down the role of Adam and took on the role of Ben Cartwright, a decision that shaped the course of his career forever. When Bonanza premiered on September 12, 1959, it was one of the first TV series to be broadcast in color. That made a huge difference. The bright landscapes, the stunning mountain backdrops, the deep greens and browns of the Ponderosa Ranch, it all gave the show a cinematic feel, unlike anything else on television at the time. And at the center of it all was Lorne Greene, playing a father who was both powerful and compassionate, a leader who guided his sons through a changing world. Greene's portrayal of Ben Cartwright made the character legendary. He wasn't just a rancher, he was a man of deep values, a father who believed in justice, loyalty, and integrity. He was stern but fair, strong but kind. Unlike many Western heroes of the time, Ben Cartwright wasn't just solving problems with a gun. He was teaching lessons, offering wisdom, shaping the lives of his three very different sons. That dynamic made Bonanza stand out. It wasn't just a Western, it was a family drama set against the backdrop of the Wild West. Behind the scenes, Greene formed strong bonds with his co-stars. He became especially close with Michael Landon and Dan Blocker. Landon, who played Little Joe, saw Greene as a mentor both on and off screen. Their friendship lasted for years, and Landon often credited Greene for teaching him how to navigate Hollywood. Dan Blocker, who played the lovable and strong-hearted Hoss, had a deep respect for Greene and considered him a father figure in real life. But not all relationships on set were easy. Pernell Roberts, who played Adam, had a very different experience. A classically trained actor, Roberts saw Bonanza as formulaic, lacking the depth and complexity he wanted. He often clashed with the show's producers and grew frustrated with the scripts. He felt that Adam's character was too limited, too obedient to his father. The tension spilled over onto the set, leading to frequent disagreements with Greene. While Greene wanted Bonanza to focus on family and emotional storytelling, Roberts was looking for something more intellectual, more artistic. Eventually, after 6 seasons, Roberts had enough. He left the show in 1965, never looking back. While his departure created a void, Bonanza continued on, remaining one of the most watched shows on television. Greene played a major role in shaping the direction of the series. He pushed for stories that went beyond simple shootouts and bank robberies. He wanted Bonanza to have meaning, to explore issues that mattered. Under his influence, the show tackled racism, discrimination, and social justice, topics that were rarely addressed on TV at the time. One of the most powerful episodes, Enter Thomas Bowers, 1964, dealt with racial prejudice against an African-American opera singer. Another episode confronted anti-Chinese bias, while others explored the struggles of Native American communities. Greene understood that television had the power to educate as well as entertain, and he made sure Bonanza used its platform wisely. The show's success was undeniable. It ran for an incredible 14 seasons, from 1959 to 1973, producing a total of 432 episodes. Greene appeared in every single one, making him one of the most recognizable father figures in television history. Bonanza wasn't just a Western, it became part of American culture, a show that families gathered around every week. In 2007, TV Guide ranked Ben Cartwright as the second most beloved TV dad of all time. Greene had created something special, something that resonated across generations. He wasn't just acting, he was embodying a character who represented strength, wisdom, and love. But after 14 years, even the most beloved shows must come to an end. By 1973, Bonanza was losing its audience, and the sudden death of Dan Blocker made it clear that the show's time was over. The final episode aired on January 16, 1973, closing the chapter on one of television's most successful runs. For Greene, saying goodbye to Bonanza was bittersweet. He had spent over a decade as Ben Cartwright, and now, for the first time in years, he had to figure out what came next. He had been a rancher, a father, a mentor. But could he step into something new? Could he leave Bonanza behind and find a second act in Hollywood? He was about to find out. After 14 seasons as Ben Cartwright, Lorne Greene had become one of the most recognizable faces on television. Bonanza had made him a household name, but when the show ended in 1973, he found himself at a crossroads. Could he break free from the role that had defined him for over a decade? Could he reinvent himself once again? The answer as always with Greene, was yes. But his next big moment wouldn't come from television. It would come from music. In 1964, while still starring in Bonanza, Greene took a surprising detour into the recording industry. He released a spoken-word ballad titled Ringo, a dramatic retelling of the life of a gunslinger. It wasn't sung. It was narrated in Greene's deep, commanding voice over a Western-style instrumental. At the time, the Beatles were taking over the world, and some people assumed the song was about Ringo Starr. But once they listened, they found something entirely different. A gripping, cinematic story of an outlaw's rise and fall. Audiences were hooked. Ringo shot to the top of the Billboard Hot 100, reaching #1 on December 5, 1964. It also topped Canada's RPM Top Singles chart, making Greene one of the few television actors to achieve a #1 hit while still starring in a primetime series. The song's unexpected success led to more recordings. Greene signed with RCA Victor and released multiple albums inspired by his Western persona. His deep voice gave his music a storytelling quality, reminiscent of classic cowboy ballads. Although Greene never considered himself a musician in the traditional sense, his albums found an audience, and his recordings remain collector's items to this day. His success in music proved something important. He wasn't just Ben Cartwright. He had an identity beyond Bonanza, and people were willing to follow him wherever he went. And in 1978, they followed him somewhere completely unexpected: outer space. That year, Greene took on a role unlike anything he had done before. He became Commander Adama, the leader of humanity's last survivors, in Battlestar Galactica. The show was an ambitious sci-fi epic, following a fleet of spaceships searching for a new home after their civilization was destroyed by the robotic Cylons. It was a bold departure from the Westerns that had defined Greene's career. At first, he wasn't sure it was the right fit. Science fiction was new territory for him, and he wondered if audiences would accept him in such a different role. But as he read the scripts and learned more about the genre, his doubts disappeared. He dove into research, reading books on space travel, watching films like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and studying the growing popularity of Star Wars. The more he learned, the more he realized that Battlestar Galactica wasn't just about spaceships and aliens. It was about survival, leadership, and humanity's resilience. Commander Adama was more than just a military leader. He was a father figure, a protector, a man carrying the weight of an entire civilization on his shoulders. In many ways, it was a natural evolution of his role as Ben Cartwright. Only this time, instead of guiding his sons through the Wild West, he was guiding the last remnants of mankind through the stars. NBC had high hopes for Battlestar Galactica. The show had one of the biggest budgets in television history at the time, costing over $1 million per episode. It featured cutting-edge special effects, thrilling space battles, and a storyline filled with deep themes of war, faith, and destiny. Greene, with his commanding presence and authoritative voice, was the perfect anchor for the series. But despite its grand ambitions, the show faced an uphill battle. Critics were divided. Some praised its scale and storytelling, while others dismissed it as a Star Wars imitation. And then, there was the cost. At a time when networks were reluctant to invest heavily in science fiction, Battlestar Galactica became a victim of its own ambition. The high production costs made it difficult to sustain, and after just one season, NBC pulled the plug. The show was canceled in 1979, cutting short what many believed had the potential to be a long-running hit. But just like Bonanza, Battlestar Galactica refused to fade away. Over the years, it developed a loyal cult following. Fans kept the legacy alive, demanding revivals and sequels. Greene himself would reprise his role as Adama in Galactica 1980. a short-lived attempt to continue the story. While the follow-up never reached the heights of the original, it proved that Battlestar Galactica had made an impact. For Greene, Battlestar Galactica was more than just another acting job. It was proof that he could still lead a major television series even after Bonanza. He had reinvented himself once again, proving that he was more than just a Western star. Whether in the Old West or deep space, his presence commanded attention. But as the 1980s arrived, Greene's time in the spotlight was starting to slow down. He had conquered radio, television, and music. He had played legendary figures, shaped beloved stories, and left his mark on multiple genres. Now, as he entered the later years of his life, he turned his attention to something even bigger, using his voice for a cause that mattered. Lorne Greene was more than just an actor. He was a mentor, a businessman, and a man who understood the value of looking beyond the screen. While Bonanza made him a television icon, his influence in Hollywood stretched far beyond his performances. He wasn't just creating characters, he was shaping careers and changing the industry from within. One of the actors who benefited most from Greene's guidance was Michael Landon. When Bonanza began, Landon was still in his early 20s, eager to make his mark in Hollywood. Greene, already an established figure, took him under his wing. He taught Landon about professionalism, storytelling, and the importance of understanding both the creative and business sides of the industry. Over time, Landon grew from a young actor into a writer, director, and producer, eventually creating hit shows like Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven. He often credited Greene for helping him develop the skills he needed to take control of his own career. But Landon wasn't the only rising star Greene helped along the way. In the 1950s, a young Canadian actor named William Shatner was trying to break into the business. At the time, Shatner was struggling to find steady work, balancing stage performances with small television roles. Greene, who had worked in Canadian theater before making it big, saw promise in the young actor and offered him both career advice and financial guidance. Shatner later recalled that Greene introduced him to the world of investing, urging him to think about the long-term security of his career. The lesson wasn't lost on him. Decades later, Shatner would become one of Hollywood's most financially savvy actors, turning his Star Trek fame into lucrative business ventures. Beyond mentorship, Greene was also a shrewd businessman in his own right. While many actors struggled with finances after their careers faded, Greene ensured that his success translated into long-term security. He invested wisely, using his earnings from Bonanza and Ringo to buy real estate. Unlike some of his peers who spent lavishly on fleeting luxuries, Greene focused on stability. He understood that Hollywood could be unpredictable, and he wanted to make sure his family's future was secure. His business instincts extended beyond real estate. Greene quietly funded several production ventures, though many of them remained private. He preferred to invest behind the scenes rather than put his name front and center. While some of these projects never gained widespread recognition, they demonstrated his belief that actors should have control over their own creative and financial futures. But Greene's influence wasn't just about money. It was about improving the industry itself. He saw firsthand how actors were often taken advantage of by studios, and he used his position to push for better contracts and fairer treatment. He believed television should offer actors more than just temporary fame. It should provide long-term security and creative fulfillment. Greene also understood the power of storytelling. While Westerns had traditionally focused on action and adventure, he believed they could be something more. He advocated for deeper narratives, pushing for Bonanza to address social issues like racism, justice, and morality. He wanted television to be thought-provoking, to challenge audiences rather than simply entertain them. His vision helped shape the evolution of television westerns, paving the way for more complex, character-driven stories. Even outside of Hollywood, Greene was dedicated to making a difference. He quietly donated large portions of his earnings to causes he believed in, particularly cancer research and environmental conservation. He was passionate about protecting wildlife and played an active role in organizations focused on preserving nature. In the 1980s, he took his love for the environment a step further, becoming the host of Lorne Greene's New Wilderness, a Canadian nature documentary series. Through this project, he used his voice, one that had once delivered wartime broadcasts and Western ballads, to educate audiences about the beauty and fragility of the natural world. The series earned multiple awards and reinforced Greene's belief that media could be a tool for change. He also believed in supporting the next generation of storytellers. He funded scholarships for aspiring actors and journalists, helping young talent get the education and opportunities they needed to succeed. He knew that talent alone wasn't always enough, that sometimes people just needed someone to believe in them. Lorne Greene had spent his life in front of the camera, but his legacy stretched far beyond what audiences saw on screen. He had guided young actors, made smart business moves, and fought to improve television from within. He had given back to the world in ways that few ever knew. By the time he reached the later years of his life, he had already cemented himself as a Hollywood legend. But for Greene, true success wasn't measured by fame or fortune. It was measured by the impact he had on the people around him. And in that regard, his influence would continue long after he was gone. Behind the commanding voice and larger-than-life screen presence, Lorne Greene was a man who valued family above all else. Though his career made him a household name, his personal life was filled with both love and challenges. His first marriage was to Rita Hands, a relationship that began long before his Hollywood fame. The two married in 1938, and in 1944, they welcomed twins, Belinda Susan and Charles. For years, they built a life together, but as Greene's career took off, the pressures of Hollywood took their toll. By 1960, their marriage had come to an end, marking a difficult chapter in his personal life. But just a year later, Greene found love again. In 1961, he married actress and political activist Nancy Deal. Their relationship was different. Nancy wasn't just a partner, she was a force in her own right. She co-founded the National Women's Political Caucus and later established the Women's Institute of International Relations, using her platform to push for social change. Together, they had one daughter, Gillian Danya Greene, born in 1968. Unlike his first marriage, this union endured. Nancy remained by his side through every stage of his career, and later, through the health battles that would come in his final years. Even as he aged, Greene never stopped working. His passion for storytelling continued to evolve, and in the 1980s, he took on a new role, not as an actor, but as an advocate for nature. From 1982 to 1987, he hosted Lorne Greene's New Wilderness, a Canadian nature documentary series that educated audiences on wildlife conservation. The series wasn't just a job for him, it was a mission. Greene had long been passionate about protecting the environment, and now he used his voice to bring attention to endangered species and the beauty of the natural world. The show won multiple awards and became one of his proudest achievements. But even as he remained active in his career, his health was beginning to decline. In August 1987, Greene was admitted to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica for emergency ulcer surgery. The procedure was supposed to be routine, but complications arose. Just days after the operation, pneumonia set in, and his condition quickly worsened. On September 11, 1987, Lorne Greene passed away at the age of 72. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Though he had been a fixture on television screens for decades, few realized just how much he had meant to people until he was gone. Tributes poured in from colleagues, fans, and former co-stars. Michael Landon, who had once been a young actor under Greene's mentorship, spoke of the profound impact he had on his life. Even Pernell Roberts, who had often clashed with Greene on Bonanza, publicly honored his legacy. More than 500 people attended his funeral, a testament to the deep respect and admiration he had earned over the years. He was laid to rest at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City, California. But his legacy didn't end there. In the years following his death, Greene continued to be honored for his contributions to entertainment. In 1969, he had been appointed an Officer of the Order of Canada, recognizing his achievements in broadcasting and television. On February 12, 1985, his 70th birthday, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a permanent tribute to his impact on the industry. In Canada, his influence was just as deeply felt. Queen's University, where he first discovered his love for acting, established the Lorne Greene Award to honor excellence in theater. In 2006, Canada Post issued a commemorative stamp featuring his likeness as part of its Canadians in Hollywood series. And in 2015, he was posthumously inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame, cementing his place as one of the country's most celebrated performers. But perhaps his greatest legacy lives on in the hearts of the audiences who grew up watching him. Bonanza continues to air in syndication, introducing new generations to the wisdom and strength of Ben Cartwright. Even decades after the show ended, fans still remember Greene's deep voice, his steady presence, and the values he represented. In 2007, TV Guide ranked Ben Cartwright as the second most beloved TV father of all time, a testament to the impact Greene had on popular culture. For over 50 years, Lorne Greene used his voice to tell stories, to inspire, and to lead. Whether he was guiding his sons on the Ponderosa, commanding a fleet of survivors in Battlestar Galactica, or narrating the wonders of the natural world, he brought authority, warmth, and depth to everything he touched. His career spanned radio, television, film, music, and even conservation. But through it all, he remained the same: a storyteller, a leader, and a man whose legacy would endure far beyond his time. For generations, Lorne Greene's voice echoed through living rooms, shaping the way audiences saw family, leadership, and integrity. Bonanza became one of the most cherished series in television history, and at its heart was Ben Cartwright, a father figure whose wisdom and strength left a lasting mark. But Greene's influence went far beyond the Ponderosa. He paved the way for actors to take control of their careers, fought for meaningful storytelling, and used his platform to educate and inspire. Honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, recognized by the Order of Canada, and immortalized on a Canadian postage stamp, his legacy endures. Yet, his true impact isn't found in awards. It's in the stories he told, the voices he lifted, and the audiences he moved. He wasn't just a cowboy on television. He was a visionary, a mentor, and a man who forever changed Hollywood.